Welcome to Agentic Workflows, the Money Series. Episode 5, Lead Generation Machine.
It is good to be back. And today I think is the day. This is the one we've been building up to.
Oh, absolutely. This is the actual money part. I mean, we've spent the last 4 deep dives really laying the groundwork, haven't we?
We have. We've talked about the theory, the philosophy, how to set up your environment, where to get your API keys.
Right, understanding the fundamental difference between just an LLM and a true agent. We've done the homework.
We've done all the prep work.
But today feels different. Today feels, I don't know, aggressive in the best possible way. We are talking about building a machine that literally, and I mean literally, hunts for business while you're asleep.
Exactly. And it ties directly back to that concept we touched on way back in the first episode, the river of value.
Okay, I love this analogy. Let's unpack this properly because I think it's so important. For anyone who might be jumping in late, or maybe they heard it, but the scale of it didn't quite click. Because when I first read about this in the source material, it made economics make sense to me in a way it never had before.
Well, the idea is pretty simple at its core. Just imagine the entire global economy as this massive, rushing river.
Okay.
All the capital, all the money, all the resources, it all flows like water. And it follows a kind of physics, right?
Yeah.
It takes the path of least resistance, and it always flows toward where value is being created.
Toward value.
Always. And for, thousands of years, that value was basically just human labor.
Yeah.
You're standing by the river with a bucket, you dip it in, and you get some water. That's a job. You're trading your time, your physical presence, for one bucket of water.
Right. And the limitation there is just so obvious. You only have 2 hands. You've only got so many hours in a day. You can only physically dip that bucket so many times. You cannot scale yourself.
Precisely. That's linear scaling.
Yeah.
1 hour of work, 1 bucket of water. But then technology comes along, and people figure out how to dig tributaries. They learn to divert the stream.
The Industrial Revolution.
The Industrial Revolution was a massive diversion project. Suddenly, one person wasn't just dipping a bucket, they were managing a dam or a canal system. They built a machine that did the dipping for them 1,000 times faster.
And the whole premise here, the central thesis of this entire series, is that these agentic workflows, they are the new canals. They're the new tributaries for the digital age.
Yes. If you can build a system that autonomously identifies a need, identifies a customer, and then captures that value, you are no longer limited by how fast you can dip your own bucket.
You're not the laborer anymore.
You're not. You're essentially digging a trench that diverts a huge flow from that river directly to your doorstep. And the specific tool we're discussing today, this lead generation machine, is the excavator you use to dig that trench.
I love that image. An excavator. So the mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle this specific workflow from the course. We are moving beyond the freelance platforms, right? We're not waiting for a job to pop up on Upwork anymore.
No. That's
Yeah.
the old way. Upwork, Fiverr, all those job boards, that's a passive model.
You're standing by the river hoping a fish jumps into your bucket.
Perfect. It happens, sure, but you can't control it. You're completely at the mercy of the platform's algorithm, the demand of that specific day. What we are doing today is outbound prospecting.
Active.
Active. We are identifying strangers who fit a very specific profile, we're finding their contact information, and we're reaching out to them at a scale that was impossible for a single person to do before.
It's the difference between saying, I really hope someone hires me, and I am going to find the people who need me and make them an offer they can't ignore.
Correct. And you're going to do it without spending 10 hours a day on LinkedIn, manually clicking connect and copy-pasting the same boring message over and over again.
All right, let's get into it. The philosophy of this machine. The source material breaks it down into a 4-step pipeline. On paper, it sounds almost too simple. Scrape, enrich, validate, and outreach.
It does sound simple.
But before we get into the steps, I want to pause on the interface. Because I think when people hear automation, a lot of them immediately picture a drag and drop tool. They're thinking of Zapier or Make.com, where you're connecting these little bubbles together.
And look, those tools are fantastic for simple automations. When I get an email, add a row to a spreadsheet, they're great for that.
Sure.
But what we're talking about here involves a level of reasoning, of logic, that those drag and drop tools really struggle with. We are working in the IDE, the integrated development environment.
Which is the part that usually scares people off.
It does. This looks like something out of the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
A black screen, the bunch of colorful text. It's
Yeah.
intimidating.
Oh.
But the whole point is that the way we interact with it has fundamentally changed. We're using natural language.
Yeah.
We're having a conversation with an agent, and the agent is the one doing the coding.
Which brings us back to that DO framework we keep hammering home. Directive, orchestration, execution.
Let's do a quick review because it's
Yeah.
so fundamental. The directive is the what. It's your high-level goal. The orchestration is the how, the plan. And execution is the do, the actual running of the code.
Okay.
In the old way, you had to be the orchestrator and the executioner. You had to manually write the Python script yourself. You had to debug the API calls when they failed. It was a ton of work,
You were in the weeds.
deep in the weeds. In the agentic way, using this DO framework, you just provide the directive. You give a simple command in plain English. For example, scrape 200 HVAC owners in Texas.
That's it. That's the command.
That's the command. The agent, acting as the orchestrator, then figures out how to accomplish that. It looks at its toolbox, its collection of execution scripts, and it says, okay, to get 200 HVAC owners, first I need to call my scraping script, then I need to pass that data to my enrichment script, and then to the validation script. It builds the plan.
It's like being the captain of a ship versus being the guy in the engine room shoveling coal. You just stand on the bridge and say, take us to Texas, and the crew handles the sails, the rudder, the navigation, everything.
That is a perfect analogy. You are the strategist, the agent is your entire logistics division, and today we're going to inspect exactly how that crew operates, station by station.
Okay, let's do it. Station 1, scraping. This is about finding the people. The source material is very, very specific about the source of truth here. It says we're not just Googling random people, we're using LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So why Sales Nav? Why not just regular LinkedIn or a generic Google search?
It comes down to one word: structure. The open internet is messy. It's chaotic. If you search HVAC owner Texas on Google, what do you get? You get some Yelp pages, maybe some news articles about the industry, a bunch of ads. It's all unstructured noise.
You'd have to sift through all of it manually.
Exactly. LinkedIn Sales Navigator, on the other hand, is a structured database of practically the entire professional world. You can apply these incredibly granular filters. Filter by industry, by specific job title, by company size, by geography, years in business.
It turns the professional world into a spreadsheet before you even start.
You've got it. It's the difference between looking for a needle in a haystack and looking for a needle in a drawer that's clearly labeled needles.
Okay, that makes total sense. But here's the part in the course that I found really interesting and, frankly, a little counterintuitive.
The manual trigger.
The manual trigger. The instructor specifically recommends that you should actually go to the LinkedIn website yourself, type in your search, HEAC owners in Texas, apply all your filters manually, and then copy that final URL and feed it to the agent. Why? Why go through that manual step? Why not just tell the agent, hey, go search LinkedIn for HVAC guys?
This is such a brilliant insight into the current state of AI. It really highlights a limitation around interpretation error and what's called the context window. It's all about steering the ship right at the start.
Okay.
If you give a vague command like, go find me leads, the agent might interpret that in 5 different ways. It might search for HVAC employees instead of owners.
Oh, big difference.
Huge difference. It might search globally instead of just in Texas. It might accidentally apply a filter you didn't intend, like companies that are currently hiring, which could narrow your pool way too much.
So it just creates noise and ambiguity right at the start of the process.
It creates massive noise. By generating that search URL yourself, you are locking in the exact parameters. You're saying, agent, don't think, just go look at this specific pool of people. You're defining the sandbox it's allowed to play in.
You're reducing the chance of error to almost zero at the most important step. It's like giving a hunting dog the exact scent before you let it off the leash.
That's it. You steer the ship out of the harbor to prevent it from accidentally sailing to the wrong continent. It's a hybrid approach. Human strategy, machine execution.
I love that. Human strategy, machine execution. Okay, so we've given the agent the URL. What does the agent actually do with it? It's not opening a browser and clicking buttons like a human would, is it? It's not moving a mouse cursor around the screen.
No, and that's a really important point for both speed and stability. A human browsing LinkedIn is incredibly slow. A headless browser, which is a bot that simulates a mouse, is faster, but it's very brittle.
What do you mean by brittle?
I mean that if LinkedIn changes the color of a button or moves it 2 pixels to the left, the bot breaks. You can't find the button anymore and the whole script fails.
Okay.
So the agent uses dedicated tools. The source mentions a few specific ones, like Phantom Buster, Vane, or Epify. These are services that have APIs, application programming interfaces.
Okay, we've used that term a lot, API. I want to make sure everyone listening really, really gets this concept.
Think of an API like a waiter in a restaurant. You are the customer, in this case the agent. The kitchen, that's Phantom Buster, has all the data you want. Now, you don't just walk into the kitchen yourself and start flipping through their fridges, right?
No, you'd get kicked out.
You'd get kicked out. You sit at your table and you give your order to the waiter, the API. You say, I would like the HVAC list. The waiter takes your very specific order to the kitchen prepares it, in this case, scrapes the data, and the waiter brings it back to you on a plate.
And the plate is usually what, a JSON file or a spreadsheet?
Usually a JSON file, yeah. And it brings back everything: name, company, location, their profile URL.
And crucially, it does it in bulk. That's the execution layer we talked about. The agent calls a little Python script that talks to Phantom Buster through that API.
Precisely.
So in the course example, the goal was to find 200 HVAC owners. The user's prompt is just a simple sentence. Scrape 200 HVAC owners in the US.
Right. And then you watch the process unfold. The agent first checks its existing directives. It asks itself, do I have a tool for scraping? The answer is yes. It pulls the execution script. But then, and this is the really agentic part, it runs a test. It doesn't just blindly fire off 200 requests.
It scrapes a small sample first.
It scrapes 25 leads first.
A test scrape. That seems like such a small detail, but it feels really significant. Why bother with that extra step?
Because data is always messy.
Yeah.
What if your search URL was slightly wrong? What if, in the filters, you accidentally clicked HVAC students instead of owners?
Oh, no.
If you run 2,000 leads, you've just wasted time and money on a useless list. So the agent scrapes 25, it validates them, it looks at the job title column and asks, does this data match the user's intent? And then, only if that test passes, does it run the full scrape.
That saves so much potential headache. I can't tell you how many times I've run a big data export, walked away to get coffee, come back an hour later, and realized I filtered for the wrong date range or something.
We've all been there. The agent does that validation check for you, autonomously. If it looks good, it proceeds. If something looks wrong, it stops and asks for help. It prevents those costly mistakes.
Okay, so step 1 is done. We have a list. It's got names and company names. Bob Smith, Bob's Cooling, Austin, Texas. But we have a huge problem. We don't have Bob's email address. LinkedIn doesn't just hand that over for privacy reasons.
Correct. And this is where we move into the second major step, enrichment. This is the missing link.
I love that term, enrichment. It's so much better than just data lookup. It sounds like we're adding vitamins to our data to make it stronger.
In a way, you are. You're making the data actionable. A name in a company is just information. An email address is a call to action. You can do something with it.
And the source mentions a few tools for this, like AnyMailFinder, Apollo, Clearbit.
Right.
How does that magic trick actually work? Because it feels like magic. How do these services go from just Bob Smith at Bob's Cooling to Bob at bobscooling.com?
It's a combination of a massive database and some clever technical verification. It's basically a probabilistic game.
Okay.
So first, these tools have enormous databases of emails that they've scraped and verified over years. That's the first place they check. The agent takes your scraped data, the name and the company domain, and it pings the enrichment tool's API. The tool checks its database. If it finds a verified match, great, you're done.
And if it doesn't find a match in the database?
If it doesn't, it moves to step 2, derivation. It knows that most companies use a handful of standard email formats.
Like firstname.lastname@domain.com.
Or firstinitial.lastname@domain.com, or just firstname@domain.com. It generates a list of the most likely permutations. Then it does what's called a handshake with the company's email server.
A handshake? What does that mean?
It means it sends a tiny ping to the server for each of those potential emails. It basically knocks on the door and says, hey, server at bobschooling.com, do you have a user in your system named Bob at bobschooling.com?
And the server replies.
The server will reply with either a, yes, I know that user, or a no user unknown. It doesn't actually send an email, so it's not intrusive. It just verifies if the address is valid. It's like checking if a mailbox exists before you put a letter in it.
So it's doing this digital knock on the door to see if anyone's home.
That's a great way to put it. And here's the key workflow piece that the source really emphasizes: the fallback behavior. What happens if the first tool, say Apollo, doesn't find the email?
A bad non-agentic automation would just stop. It would say error, or just give you a blank cell on your spreadsheet.
Exactly. And a blank cell is a lost opportunity. But a true agentic workflow has a directive for what to do in case of failure. It has a fallback plan.
So if Apollo fails,
the agent is programmed to automatically try a secondary service, like AnyMailFinder. It takes the same data and pings a different API.
and if that one fails too?
Then it can trigger a third tool, maybe a web browsing agent that literally goes to the Bob's Cooling website, clicks on the Contact Us page and scrapes the page for any email address it can find, like an info at address.
Wow. Okay, so just to get this straight, the agent scrapes the lead, then it tries API number 1. If that misses, it automatically tries API number 2. If that also misses, it literally goes to their website and starts looking around for an email address, just like a human research assistant would.
All in the span of a few seconds, and all without you having to lift a finger.
That is the definition of tenacity. It's like having an employee who just refuses to take "I don't know" for an answer. They will find that email.
And that tenacity creates a real competitive advantage because most people give up after the first easy search. If you can find the hard-to-find contact information, you're facing a lot less competition in their inbox.
That's a fantastic point. The harder someone is to reach, the fewer cold emails they're probably getting.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're making progress. We have the name, the company, and now a verified email address. But the question is, do we trust it completely? And is this even the right person to contact? This brings us to the next section, validation and filtering.
Quality control. This is absolutely vital. You cannot, and I will say this again, you cannot just send emails into the void. If you start sending emails to invalid addresses, your bounce rate goes through the roof.
Can you explain bounce rate for anyone who's not deep in the email marketing world?
Sure. A hard bounce is when you send an email to an address that simply doesn't exist. The receiving server rejects it immediately. If you do this too often, and the threshold is low, maybe more than 2 or 3% of your emails, the big providers like Gmail and Outlook will flag you as a spammer.
Why?
Because it's a signal that you probably bought a cheap, old, dirty email list. And they don't want that on their platform.
Then what happens when they flag you?
Then they start sending all of your emails directly to the spam folder, even the ones you're sending to real people who want to hear from you. You effectively burn your domain's reputation.
So you're poisoning your own well. You're ruining your ability to contact anyone.
Completely. So the workflow absolutely must include a validation step. Is this email technically deliverable? But beyond the technical validation, there is contextual validation. And this is where the LLM's reasoning ability really shines.
This is where that hilarious example from the source material comes in. The story about Neuralink and Satya Nadella.
Yes, this is the perfect illustration of the dangers of blind, dumb automation. So the agent was tasked with finding leads in a specific tech sector. It went out, it scraped a list of 100 names.
Looked good on paper.
And looked great. But when a human or a smarter agent doing a second pass actually looked at the list, one of the leads was a mid-level employee at Neuralink, and another one was Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft.
Now, if your business is selling, I don't know, a $500 a month service for local small businesses, Satya Nadella is probably not your ideal customer profile.
He is not. And sending him a cold email is a waste of a token, it's a waste of time, and it's frankly just embarrassing. It screams, I am a bot who doesn't know what they're doing.
So how do we stop the agent from pitching the CEO of Microsoft on local SEO services?
You give it a better definition of done in the directive. You write better rules. You tell the agent, filter out any contact whose company size is over 500 employees, or filter out anyone with CEO of a Fortune 500 company in their title. The agent needs clear criteria to distinguish a good lead from a bad one.
So it's not enough to just say find leads. You have to be super specific. Find these kinds of leads and explicitly ignore those kinds of leads.
Precision is everything. A dumb script can only search for keywords. An LLM can understand context and nuance. You can give it a more abstract rule like ignore companies that sound like venture-backed tech startups or prioritize companies that describe themselves as family-owned.
Wow, so the LLM can actually read the company's bio on LinkedIn and make that kind of judgment call?
It can. It can make a qualitative assessment. That's a semantic filter, not just a simple keyword filter.
That's a huge leap. And there's one other filter mentioned in the source that's arguably even more important for both legal and ethical reasons. The unsubscribe filter.
Yes, the so-called hunk of junk filter. Basically, if you've emailed someone in the past and they replied with stop or take me off your list, you absolutely do not want to scrape them again next month and email them a second time.
That's how you get spam complaints and potentially break the law.
It's a violation of CAN spam laws here in the U.S., and it's just terrible business practice. The workflow needs to have a memory, it needs a do not contact list, and it has to check every new lead against that list before adding them to the final outreach pile.
So the machine has to have a conscience, or at least a very strict compliance protocol.
A compliance protocol is a good way to put it. It's a set of guardrails that protects you from yourself.
Okay, this is all fantastic. Let's move on to Section 5. Because this is the part that I think really just blew my mind when it came to the sheer speed of this whole thing. The optimization, the difference between serial and parallel processing.
This is the technical secret sauce.
Yeah.
This is how you go from having a cool little toy to having an industrial-grade machine.
So let's start with serial processing. This is the default mode for most people and most basic scripts, right? One thing at a time.
Yes. Serial means doing one task at a time, in a sequence. Imagine you have your list of 200 leads. Serial processing is pick up lead #1, call the scraping API, wait for it to respond. Okay, now call the enrichment API for lead #1, wait again. Okay, now validate lead #1, done. Now pick up lead #2 and start the whole process over.
It's a single file line. It's like having only one cashier open at a massive grocery store on a Saturday.
That's a great analogy. And if each lead takes, let's say, 10 seconds to process from start to finish, doing 2,000 leads will take you over 5.5 hours. It works, but it's painfully slow. And if the script crashes on lead #1500, you have a real mess on your hands.
A real mess. Okay, so what is parallel processing?
It's batching. It's asynchronous. It means doing everything at once. Instead of sending one request to the Phantom Buster API, waiting for the response and then sending the next one, you send all 200 requests simultaneously. You open 200 doors at the exact same moment.
That sounds chaotic. How does that even work?
Your computer can handle many network connections at once. So instead of one long 5-hour process, you have 2,000 tiny 10-second processes all running at the same time.
So instead of 5.5 hours, how long does the same job of 2,000 leads take?
The source mentions the time for a smaller batch, dropping from 20 minutes down to just 1 minute. It's an exponential increase in speed. You're no longer limited by the time it takes to do the tasks sequentially. You're only limited by your computer's resources and the API's rate limits.
And the instructor in the course has this order of magnitude rule he talks about.
Yes, and this is a fantastic piece of advice for anyone in this space, he says. Only spend your time optimizing a workflow if you can get at least a 10x improvement.
A 10?
A 10x. Don't spend 5 hours rewriting a script just to shave 10 seconds off the total runtime. That's a terrible return on your time. It's a waste. But parallelization, that is a true 10x unlock, or even a 100x unlock.
It makes the workflow faster, cheaper, because you're using compute time more efficiently.
And infinitely more scalable.
It fundamentally changes the game. It takes you from, I can maybe find 50 decent leads a day if I grind, to I can find 5,000 high-quality leads before my first coffee is finished.
And that kind of volume changes the entire economics of your business. It turns the output of a side hustle into the output of a full-blown enterprise sales team.
Which leads us perfectly into the next section. You've found the people, you've got their verified emails, you've filtered out the bad fits, you did it all at lightning speed. Now for the moment of truth, what do you actually say to them?
The outreach. And this, honestly, is where most people completely fail.
Yeah.
They do all this amazing technical work to get the data, and then they send a weak, generic, fluffy message.
Hi, I hope this email finds you well.
Instant delete. The source material provides a very specific, very bold template. It's called the Grand Slam offer, and it is not for the faint of heart. Let me read the example from the transcript directly. I want to generate $50,000 in revenue for company name in the next 90 days.
Okay, that's a strong start.
And then the kicker, if I don't hit that number, I'll work for free until I do.
Wow. Just pause on that for a second. If you're a busy business owner and you get that email in your inbox,
It stops you in your tracks. It is so different from the 99 other emails that say, can I have 15 minutes of your time to pick your brain?
it's a distinct value proposition. It's specific. You're not just saying, I'll grow your business. You're saying $50,000. It's time-bound, in 90 days. And most importantly, it completely reverses the risk.
It puts all the risk on the person sending the email. It removes the client's fear that they're going to pay a bunch of money for nothing.
It signals an insane amount of confidence.
It does. Now, obviously, you have to be able to actually deliver on that promise, which is a topic for our next deep dive. But just for getting a reply, for starting a conversation, this is how you cut through the noise.
But here's the catch. You can't just send that exact same text to 2,000 people, or it still feels like spam. You need some personalization. But we can't possibly set and write 2,000 personalized first lines by hand.
Correct. And this brings us to another brilliant little workflow from the course. The casualization workflow.
I love this term, casualization. It sounds like we're dressing our data up in sweatpants and a t-shirt.
In a way, We are. The goal is to pass the Turing test of the inbox. An email has to feel like it was written by a human for a human. If it looks like a robot wrote it, perfect grammar, weirdly formal phrasing, generic compliments like, I was so impressed by your work at company name, people's spam detectors go off and they just delete it.
It just reeks of automation. Dear sir or madam, I trust this missive finds you in good health.
Laughs. Exactly. No one talks like that in real life. The casualization prompt basically tells the agent, rewrite the first line of this email based on the scraped data, but make it sound like I typed it on my phone while I was waiting in line for a coffee.
So things like using lowercase letters to start a sentence.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Using simpler words, more direct language. For example, instead of, I noted with great interest your company's recent expansion into the Texan market, it would be, hey, saw you're expanding in Texas. Cool.
It's a totally different vibe, and the source mentioned a really clever trick for this, using voice transcription to draft the initial prompt so the output sounds like a colleague, not a textbook.
Yes, this is a great hack. You literally dictate your ideal email into your phone's voice memo app. You capture the transcription with all the ums and ahs and slightly broken sentences included. Then you feed that text to the LLM as a style guide.
You're giving it a sample of your own voice.
You're saying, right like this, the agent learns your cadence, your rhythm. So when it generates those 2,000 personalized first lines, they all sound like you took the time to send 2,000 individual casual emails.
That is the secret right there. It's achieving scale without losing the soul.
Precisely.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second. We've got all these incredible individual components. We have the scraper, the enricher, the personalizer, the emailer. How do we glue them all together so they work as one seamless system? This is section 7, the Metadirective pattern.
I like to call it the umbrella.
The umbrella. Okay, explain that architecture.
Up to this point, we've kind of talked about these as separate tasks. You run the scraper script. It spits out a file. You take that file and upload it to the enricher script. That spits out another file. Then you upload that to the emailer. That's a manual handoff.
And every manual handoff is a point of failure. It's where mistakes happen, and it's where time just dies.
Exactly. The Metadirective, or the manager agent, is designed to eliminate the handoff. You create a parent agent, an umbrella, that oversees the entire process from start to finish.
So you create one master workflow, like a new client workflow.
Yes. The trigger could be something simple, like you typing run lead gen. The Metadirective then takes over. It tells the scraper agent, your turn, go. The scraper finishes its job and reports back to the manager. The Metadirective instantly takes that output and passes it as input to the enricher agent and says, you're up, go. Then to the personalizer, then to the drafter.
So you're not waiting for the scraper to finish and then remembering to run the next step. The system knows, the agent knows that when step A is done, step B starts automatically. It's passing the baton in a relay race.
It creates a continuous, uninterrupted river of data. You push one button at the beginning, and the process flows all the way to the desired end result, which might be a folder full of drafted proposals or a sent email campaign.
And the source material outlined a really powerful example workflow. A new client signs up with you. The agent detects this, analyzes their specific niche, automatically scrapes a list of leads for that new client, enriches the emails, personalizes the first lines, generates a draft proposal, and then sends you a summary of the completed work.
Now think about the power of that. You sign a new client, you type their industry into your agent, and 10 minutes later you have a complete, ready-to-launch outreach campaign built specifically for them. That's what we mean when we talk about the Money series. That's insane operational leverage. You're delivering massive value before the ink is even dry on the contract.
It's incredible. I have to play devil's advocate for a minute here. We're talking about automating outreach. We're talking about sending potentially thousands of emails. Is this just spam? Are we just building a high-tech spam cannon?
That is the critical question, and we have to address it head on. This brings us to Section 8, Volume Math and Compliance.
Let's start with the math. There's a concept from the source called the math of error rates.
This is a really sobering statistic, and it explains why building these systems robustly is so hard to do well. Let's say you have a 5-step process like we've described: scrape, filter, enrich, validate, email. And let's say each individual step is 90% accurate, which sounds pretty good, right? 90% sounds great. That's an A- in school. Sure. But in a sequential process, the probabilities multiply. So you have 0.9 times 0.9 times 0.9. By the time you get to the end of that fifth step, your total system success rate has dropped to about 59%.
Ouch. So you're saying that a process where every single step is an A-minuses still fails or produces bad data almost half the time.
Almost half the time. And this is why that execution layer, the deterministic code, the Python scripts, is so crucial. Code is reliable. If you write a script to scrape a certain piece of data, it scrapes it the same way every single time. If you just rely on the AI to guess and click around a web page, it's probabilistic. It's going to make mistakes. You need the reliability of code to push that 90% accuracy for each step up to 99% or higher.
So having a really reliable system is what allows you to even play the volume game in the first place.
Yes. And at the end of the day, it is a volume game. If you can reliably process 2,000 leads in a few minutes, you can play a numbers game that simply wasn't possible for a single person to do manually. The source mentions scaling this up to send to tens of thousands of people.
But again, that brings us back to the spam question. How do we stay legal? How do we stay out of trouble and, not be terrible citizens of the internet?
Compliance. You have to build it in from the start. We have laws like CAN spam in the US and GDPR in Europe, and the basics are pretty clear. You must provide a clear and easy way for people to opt out, and you must honor that request immediately.
And we can automate that process as well.
At this scale, you must automate it. You can't manually read through 2,000 email replies to see who said stop. The workflow must be programmed to automatically detect keywords in the replies. If someone replies with unsubscribe, remove me, not interested, or even, more colorful variations of go away.
Right, lose my number.
Never email me again. The agent has to be able to detect that intent using sentiment analysis and automatically add that person's email address to a permanent skip list or a blacklist.
So it's not just looking for them to click an unsubscribe link, it's actually reading the sentiment of their plain text reply.
Yes. This is critical. If you keep emailing someone after they've asked you to stop, you are, by definition, spamming them. If you stop immediately and never contact them again, you're doing professional cold outreach. There is a massive legal and ethical difference. The system has to build its own guardrails.
I like that framing. Automated compliance, it keeps you safe.
And it keeps your email deliverability high. If you annoy people, they mark you as spam. If enough people mark you as spam, Google and Microsoft shut down your ability to email anyone. So it's in your own direct financial interests to be respectful and compliant.
Okay, let's bring this all down to earth. Let's make it concrete. Section 9, a real example. The source walks us through a live demo of this entire machine in action. The goal: find 50 small business owners, specifically HVAC companies in Texas.
Let's walk through the steps exactly as they happened in that demo.
Okay, step 1, input. The user doesn't type a vague command. They go to LinkedIn Sales Navigator, build their search, and they provide the agent with that specific URL for HVAC owners in Texas.
Right. Step 2, process. The agent spins up, it calls the scraping tool. It pulls down 66 potential prospects from that URL.
So far, so good. But then it hits a snag. And this is my favorite part of the demo because it shows the resilience of an agentic system.
The correction, or what the source calls self-annealing. So the agent tried to use the Apollo API to enrich the emails, but the user's API key was for a free account, and they had already hit their monthly limit.
Now, a normal brittle script would just crash right there. It would throw an error 403, API limit reached, and the program would just stop.
Right, and you'd have to go in and debug it manually. But the agentic workflow is different. It realized there was an error. It read the error message that the API server sent back.
Yeah.
And it self-corrected. It pivoted.
It didn't just give up.
It said, okay, plan A, Apollo is down. My directive says to try the secondary tool. Or, in another scenario, it might even pause and ask the user, hey, this API key is maxed out. Can you provide a new one? It waits for the new input, and then it resumes the job right where it left off.
That is the definition of resilience. It didn't have to start the whole job over from scratch. It just fixed the flat tire and kept driving.
Exactly. It adapted. So step 4 was enrichment. It's successfully found 15 verified email addresses out of that batch of 66 prospects.
And finally, step 5, output. It took those 15 good leads, generated a clean Google Sheet with all their information, and then sent a summary email to the user saying, job complete.
And the total time taken for that entire process?
About 4 minutes.
4 minutes to find, scrape, verify, filter, and neatly list 15 highly targeted business leads. And the user was probably off making a cup of coffee while the whole thing happens.
And that was just a small test batch to prove the workflow. Once it's validated, you could just change the number from 50 to 5,000 and let it run.
Precisely.
It really just fundamentally changes your perspective on what work is. You stop being the person doing the repetitive task, and you become the manager of a team of digital workers who do it for you.
You are the architect. The agent is the entire workforce.
You don't wait for clients. You go find them. Episode 6. What to actually deliver when they say yes.